Today, I'm calling on more companies, I should say, in the private sector to step up with vaccine requirements that'll reach millions more people. If you're a business leader, a nonprofit leader, a state or local leader who has been waiting for full FDA approval to require vaccinations, I call on you now to do that. Require it.
Remember when they said they didn't want to do this? They weren't going to do this? Because I do. But just like everyone else and everything else we've been told over the course of this pandemic, we know it's all lies, lies, and more lies. Democrats have just totally thrown out basic medical freedom, and now Biden wants companies to mandate vaccines for all employees. So what's next? Here with reaction, former Trump White House Assistant Press Secretary and America First candidate for Congress in New Hampshire's 1st Congressional District, Karoline Leavitt. Karoline, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Buck.
What do you think about the demands from the Biden administration for private companies to do the dirty work of making sure that you get vaccinated or else?
Well, first of all, that clip you just showed, Biden is once again stumbling and bumbling over his words. He's making no sense. But what he's saying makes no sense. He has no credibility, and I am absolutely adamantly opposed to private companies, to schools, mandating vaccinations and mask mandates, by the way, on the American people. There has never been a constitutional basis, a legal basis for this, or a scientific basis for this argument. It is all about power. It's all about control. We're seeing it right here in my home state of New Hampshire, where I am running for Congress. Private companies are doing this. School boards are voting in favor of mask mandates for kids. Again, the science is not there, but also, what happened to personal responsibility and individual liberty in this country? The Biden administration is trampling all over it.
Where do you think this is going next? If the private companies don't do the full bidding of the federal government, of the Biden administration on this, do you think that they'll try something that has already been floated out there, like a ban on the unvaccinated engaging in interstate travel, at least when it comes to planes and trains? I mean, do you think that the Biden administration is going to get even more totalitarian in their approach to making you get the vax?
Oh, of course. They said they would never implement vaccine passports or mandate them. And look at the state of New York right now. You can't even go into a restaurant if you're not vaccinated. I mean, that is so un-American. If we just take a step back and put this in perspective, you cannot go out to eat with your family in some states in our country right now, our free United States of America, if you don't get a shot that the government is requiring you to get, which, by the way, most of which are not even fully approved by the government. We're basically guinea pigs for them and for their scientific project right now. We're going to look back in time, I believe, at this whole pandemic and think it was just one big bad science experiment that Dr. Fauci has been leading the way on. I've been calling for his resignation. We need an investigation into everything that he has done over the course of the past year. But he is leading the way on this, and Biden is just following suit. That is why we need patriots across the country who care about freedom, who care about individual liberty, who care about medical freedom to stand up. Now is the time. I've been joining parents at school board meetings across the state of New Hampshire to demand that our kids are not forced to be vaccinated or forced to wear masks at school this year. There is a private company here in New Hampshire, Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, that is forcing their employees to get vaccinated. I know many nurses and frontline workers there who, by the way, were not vaccinated during the pandemic and risked their lives to care for patients during the heat of it. The company said nothing then, but now the science, there's no science for it, and now they're mandating the vaccine on them now and actually forcing them to quit their jobs or firing them if they don't comply. It's absolute madness. We are going down a very dark path. We need leaders to stand up in our communities, whether it's for school board or running for Congress. Now is the time, or we are going to lose all of our individual liberties before we know it.
You mentioned Dr. Fauci, who anybody who watches this show or has heard my radio show for the last 18 months or so knows, I think, is the most destructive bureaucrat in the history of the United States. Here he is massively moving the goalposts once again. Play it.
If we could do that with the people who've been infected, get them revaccinated, the people who are unvaccinated now, that 90 million people, get them vaccinated, I think we can get a degree of overall blanket protection of the community that as we get into the early part of 2022, getting through the winter, which could be complicated by influenza, by respiratory syncytial virus, that as we get into the spring, we could start getting back to a degree of normality.
getting back to a degree of normality in the spring of 2022. Karoline, my head explodes every time I see this little tyrant on television. I didn't even understand how anyone could see him and say that they're going to listen to a word he says.
Oh, he is the biggest fraud, arguably, in America right now, other than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They are the top three for sure. But he's a deep state doctor. Look, he was in on this from the very beginning. We know he funded the gain of function research that took place in the Wuhan lab. We know he knew about the origins of the COVID-19 virus since the beginning. That's why he tried to cover it up. He was undermining President Trump every step of the way when I was there working in the White House for him. He's an absolute fraud. He needs to be investigated. We know that will never happen under Biden's regime, and as long as Pelosi is controlling Congress. But you're right, they're moving the goalposts again. For what? What are the metrics? There aren't any. There has never been any. They want us in this lockdown state forever. COVID is not going away. We cannot eradicate it with the vaccine, no matter how hard we try. That's why we're seeing vaccinated people get the virus again. And again, look, if you want to go and get the vaccine, be my guest. But Fauci and his cronies, including Biden, do not have the right to tell me or any other American that we have to go get it or we're out of work. Absolutely not. I will not stand for that. And I am running a very strong message in my campaign in New Hampshire right now because my future constituents are being affected by this madness, and we need to stand up and fight it.